Cool. Thank you very much. It's nice from you to accept this little just interview. Um, just so you know, yeah, basically the point of the article is kind of see how those how in the US it's interesting how like clubs just disappear because of like financial problem or just the league being dead like in the ASL. So it's really interesting to see how you or the community and how the fans stay together without the team basically, and what do they do waiting in between different clubs. So I was just gonna go with you through first of all kind of like how you became a fan of soccer, how did you support teams in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale or in Miami, and then maybe talking a bit about what Hammershey FC does, and yeah, and the recent thing with Beckham too, if you don't mind.
Sure. I guess I can start out. I really would growing up. I've lived my whole life in this area, so when I was a kid, at the time there wasn't a sanctioned Division I league in the United States. We had a team when I was a kid called the FortLauderdal Strikers. They had come back after leaving when the original NASL went away. They played indoor soccer in Minnesota, and then they came back as an outdoor team. But at the time, when I was a kid, I played a couple years of youth soccer, recreational, nothing serious. But I wasn't really a fan because the team that was here wasn't really presented as a big deal. I didn't even know. I had kind of heard whispers that something existed, but they were never on television. They weren't covered in the newspaper. And then at the time this area got the Miami Dolphins football team was still very good, competitive. We received we got the Miami Heat basketball, Florida Panthers in hockey, and the Marlins in baseball, all are within a stretch of 5 years, and they all had some level of pretty decent success early on. So the hype was huge for those, and those were my heroes when I was a kid. So I really didn't get into soccer because there wasn't a team here.
That was before the MLS started, right?
This was before MLS came the first time, and when they did, they were right down the road. I live in the Fort Lauderdale area my whole life, so they were right at Lockhart Stadium. I knew nothing about the politics of why they ended up there, or what name they picked, or any of that stuff, or even any of the history behind the old Strikers. So I didn't really pay attention to them until that last season that they had. I remember hearing they were getting on talk radio. People were talking about them. Ray Hudson had the team playing really well. They made the playoffs. They won the best record in the league, and then they got knocked out in the playoffs. And the league decided that they wanted to disband the Fusion and then the Mutiny, the team in Tampa Bay. And then by the neck, I didn't even know that happened because it was still relatively a fringe.
It wasn't.
Thing. So
it wasn't on newspaper.
It made the news probably one night when that happened. So the next summer when the World Cup comes around, the U.S. does really well in Korea, Japan. I was stayed up to watch some of the games. The hype was getting really good. It was kind of blowing up, and I was like, oh, I should go check out that team that we have, and they're gone. So I never got a chance to really support that team, and unfortunately they didn't get a chance because as I came to learn, if you look at the history of MLS, a lot of those teams from the beginning were struggling just as bad as they were. They had silly names or bad uniforms, and since then they've all built great stadiums and rebranded. You look at Kansas City, Wizards became Sporting Kansas City, and now they sell out all the time and have a beautiful venue. And
just a question on the Fusion. Just a question. Were there first of all? Yeah, they were playing in Lockhart Stadium.
They were playing in Lockhart. So what happened to them was they wanted to play in Miami at the old Orange Bowl Stadium, which is now been knocked down and is where the Marlins baseball team plays. But the rent was too high. The politicians weren't on their side, whatever. So they gave up on that, and they came up here. They spent, $10 million, something like that, and they renovated the stadium. And at the time, it was even before, Columbus's stadium. It was the only, or second, Charleston in the lower divisions had a stadium they had built earlier, but it was the envy of the whole league. They had the best stadium in the whole league. It wasn't some giant football stadium they were renting with college football lines on the field. It was a soccer stadium, and it was the top venue in the league. And they still, even when they left, there was only 2 stadiums like that in the entire league, and it was a shame that it kind of went to waste after that, and kind of has been stuck in limbo ever since then, from being ever improved further or renovated, that kind of thing.
I see. And were there fans of the Miami? I mean, did you go to the stadium once in the last season?
I never made it to the stadium. I went. They took us. Well, I was in middle school at the time, and they took us out one day for a field trip. They had a bunch of school classes come out, and while they did like an inter squad practice scrimmage game. But that was the only time I ever went there until much later when that would have been 2009. Because actually, then I started. That all happened. I got into the game more. Followed the 2006 World Cup. Started buying FIFA games and and really getting into the sport. And then around 2007, there was rumors that Boca Juniors is going to put an MLS team in Miami, the way that Chivas Guadalajara put a team in Los Angeles in MLS.
Interesting.
And so then that'd be cool. So I started when I researched that. One of the first things that popped up was Miami FC, which was a USL team at the time. I was like, there's already a team here. That's pretty neat. So I sent in actually. Kind of got my career as a graphic designer started because I would design sports logos for fun, and I sent them somebody suggested you should send. I did one for an MLS team in Miami, and they said somebody told me, you should send that to the pro team there and see if they like it. And so I sent it to them, and they ended up using the logo, and quite frankly, it wasn't any good. But they did offer me, hey, we don't have a graphic designer. We need an intern. And so that kind of got me in the industry a little bit. So in 2008. With that team, second division, they were still based out of Miami. So I did some freelance graphic design work for them. And then the following year, they
moved
what
to
happened was while that season was going on, one of the people who's now still involved with this Miami Beckham bid, Marcelo Claure, one of the owners, partnered with FC Barcelona to try and to put an official bid in for MLS to get a team. And so over that winter, it was almost a given they were going to get a team, and then all of a sudden he decided to back out, and Barcelona was catching a lot of heat from their supporters, obviously, of wasting money outside of Spain. So that fell apart, and then for a couple of weeks it looked like Miami FC was going to completely fold, and then they decided, you know what, no, we're going to scrape things together, we're going to play this season. And that year they split their time between FIU Stadium and Miami, and they moved some of the games up to here to Lockhart because the support was frankly pretty terrible in Miami that they had. So, and it was still not great that year because they were just, they didn't spend any money on marketing. But while all that was happening in the background, the seeds of what was unfortunately the modern NASL was forming. So they were saving their money and efforts on that because they figured they moved to end up full time to Lockhart Stadium in 2010. And then the following year, when the league was officially ready to go and sanctioned, they rebranded the club. Then took on the Strikers name, which was super exciting for me because learning about all the history and being a Fort Lauderdale guy, being in the room actually trying to convince them to use the proper name and not do a variation of it. It's like, no, we have to be the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. People are always saying you guys are going to screw this up. Don't screw it up by messing with the name. And they ended up, hiring a firm that did many of the MLS logos at the time to do it. It was they did a really bang out job branding the team, and we had a great crowd for the first game, and attendance was way up that year. It was still not super huge, but it was a lot better, and everything was kind of on a slow uptick as we started that, and as that was happening, the supporters at the time, the main supporters of the Miami FC team, were kind of always, when I got involved with them, at the founding of that, they were called the Miami Ultras. And the first time I met any of those people was at a game up here at a cricket ground that we have in the Fort Lauderdale area where two MLS teams played a preseason game. And the purpose of that group was to, kind of like the group in Philadelphia, was to rally support and bring an MLS team back.
I see, yeah.
And we'll kind of support this USL team in the meantime. So when the Strikers came back, and this has been now 2 years I've been following the team, no MLS team is happening. It doesn't look like anything's happening anytime soon, which turned out to be true. I'm starting to fall in love with the team that we have. Like, wait a minute. I'm going to games. We're hanging out. We're having a good time. We're traveling to away matches.
Yeah.
We're watching this club, and what's going to change if we get an MLS team?
Yeah,
less access to the players, less access to the coaches and staff. The ticket prices will be higher. We'll have less freedom with what we can do in the stands. Like, maybe that's not the best thing in the world. Of course, it would be fantastic if they were to come in and do a good job, and it would be good for the game and all that stuff. But why don't we push for this team to be that club? Because also at that time, Portland, Vancouver, Montreal, Seattle, many of the, now Minnesota later on, most of the teams, I think Nashville that's joining, Cincinnati, everybody that wants to get into MLS is a pre-existing club.
Yeah.
So we love the idea of promotion in this country. So recently, in the last 10 years, it's helped the second division grow and become more popular. It's given MLS some great teams. So my view was, wait a minute, these guys aren't taking this club seriously. They're just a placeholder for something else. We need to start our own thing. So a couple of us split off and formed our own supporters group that we named Flight 19, and kind of took the lead on really, backing the strikers all the way, no matter what league they were in, and what they decided to do. And that's kind of where the schism in support locally came. And so some of those guys actually that were supporting the USL team in the meantime, they just stopped coming entirely to the games and then focused completely on, tweeting David Beckham, or since he doesn't have a Twitter account, tweeting his wife.
To get him,
we need an MLS team. We're Miami. We're a big city. We just this XYZ.
Okay.
And that's what some of the people have been doing for a decade now, instead of supporting the numerous local clubs that we have in the area at various levels below MLS. And
so I got a lot of questions because you went really quickly on a lot of things. Just so if the Miami FC USL team became the NASL team, just the Miami FC NASL team, did you just started with the NASL?
Right, that was
the Ricardo Silva one.
Funny enough, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, the recent one that went away, our team started as Miami FC in 2006, and then they became the Strikers, and then what was it? It would have been 2015. The league got an offer from, or interest from, Ricardo Silva to put a team in Miami to kind of be a local rival to us, and that's the name that they chose. So they worked out they transferred whatever trademarks. That's why also they kind of sometimes refer to themselves as the Miami Football Club instead of just Miami FC, because that's their legal name, to avoid any confusion. Because at the time, our owners decided they weren't going to change the name of the actual business. They were just going to, doing business as type thing. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm looking for somebody next door.
No worries. Just so another question. Yeah, in the stands for the Strikers, were there a lot of NASL supporters that came back from the 70s or 80s?
Yeah, there was a decent amount. It was especially those first couple of seasons. You saw a lot of people with the vintage gear on, and people that were just excited about it from the old days that remember that club. It was from what, as I understand it, from being kind of really diving into the history, it was a really special thing. They kind of captured lightning in a bottle with that club, and then obviously some of the names that were on that team were world class, absolute legends. So they still have, the name still has a lot of pull. I think in this area, and the people in the sports world remember it, because at the time that was the only other professional sports team in the area. You had the football team down in Miami, and with the same owner owned the Strikers, and it was big time at that time. So yeah, you saw a lot of those people, and there was a mix of kind of the new people like us, and then there was a lot of kids. Youth soccer organizations would come out, families, that kind of thing.
Nice.
We never really found our identity as what we wanted to be. Did we want to be like a team like Dortmund or St. Pauli or something like that was, really built around the supporters, the people behind the goal? Or did we want to be somebody that was for the, older type business people, maybe people that remember the old team, or was it just for kids and families? We kind of could never make a decision. They could never really make a decision, even though they did pick the name Fort Lauderdale, how they wanted to market themselves. Did they want to just focus on this area or spread out all over it? It bounced back and forth when the ownership changed, and we never really solidified what we wanted to do. So it was pretty tough to, and being a second division, there's a stigma, even though soccer still is different because we have the Open Cup, you can compete independently and qualify for other things. Still, as a minor league team in this country, it's tough to get past that. And then with the cloud of this, MLS is coming back at some point, some people just, were holding out, not really buying into it. And it makes it tough when we don't have an open system to kind of get a community really rally behind a club.
Yeah, I see. And just so, in 2015, you had a new ownership that made the headlines with Ronaldo, the real one, of coming course. In. But this is when things started to be tricky. What did you thought at the beginning when the new ownership came? Did you thought that it'd be good for the NSL and that the NSL were coming back, or because it was starting to get a bit but rivalry with the USL was starting to get really difficult for the NSL? Did you thought that London Strikers were getting back with Ronaldo, and then what happened in the end?
Right then, at that point in time, still it was things were. The NASL was still winning the battle at that point. They were, classified as a second division while USL was third. USL had only recently kind of started to elevate itself back up with the addition of basically reserve teams in their league. That were padding their numbers and getting excited. And a lot of their teams were drawing big crowds, but they were also selling the idea that they're going up and getting promoted to MLS at some point. So driving a lot of that interest, which none of the teams in our league were publicly doing. Save for at the very end of the last year Minnesota was in the league, they made a bid and only out of self-preservation, really, because they had someone else was trying to put an MLS team in Minnesota, and the ownership said, no, well, if someone's going to do that, it's going to be us. And they did it, and they were very successful, and now their stadium opens up this spring. At that point in time, it was 2014 when we found out about the new ownership, and this was after the original announcement that Beckham was putting a team here. This was about 9 months after they made a press conference about that. So we were really excited to see that, wow, someone really believes in us enough that even in the face of that, somebody's coming in to buy this team. And when it first happened, it didn't involve Ronaldo. I found that out a little before everybody else because I was working with the team. But it was like, wow, these guys, they're coming in, they can spend money. Also, the day after we announced the ownership change, we win. We don't lose again for a month and a half. We have an 8 or 9 game unbeaten streak. Takes us all the way to the league final. Unfortunately, we lose in the second half of that game in San Antonio. But it's like, wow, the crowds are up. The team is doing well. We have this new ownership. This is going to be terrific. And then about a month after the season, Ronaldo joins the ownership. Wow, this is incredible. Who would have thought this would ever happen? But then almost immediately after that, things started. We could tell things were going a little screwy. We had this big, giant party at the Hard Rock Hotel Casino here to welcome Ronaldo when he got here, and press conference and all this stuff, and everyone's speculating, is he going to come out of retirement and play for them? And but then just some of the ideas that the ownership had of what they wanted to do, we kind of abandoned. Complete turnover of the team. They got rid of the coach that was incredibly popular, Gunter Kronsteiner, the manager. The fans all loved him. He was an absolute character. He got results on the field. Everybody loved him, and then they don't bring him back and replace him with someone who was effectively a youth soccer coach. For the first half of that next season, the kind of marketing campaign that was Ronaldo's partner company came up with was pretty wild. They called it Florida's official other team, basically saying that we're not good enough to be your favorite team, but we can be your second favorite team. They spent all this money on this, and it didn't really bring anybody out. They signed a player, Leo Mora, from Flamengo, who incredibly popular defender from Flamengo fans, and 10 years there, something like that. A great player for their club, but they bring him here and give him the number 10. and try to play him in the midfield and expect all the Brazilians are going to come and see him. Well, it's like, yeah, maybe 3,000 Flamengo fans came that first game, and when they gave away a ton of tickets to our first game against New York, and we had the biggest crowd we ever had, but none of them came back for the second game, and he didn't play very well in that position, and he was gone by the middle of the season, and things just started spiraling out of control. We weren't very good, so they get rid of the manager. They bring back the coach that they had fired, or let go, not so much fired, because everybody's kind of on a one-year contract a lot of the time at this level. So they bring him back in the middle of the season in 2015. We miss. They're late on the payroll one time that summer. Okay, but it won't happen again. Just an accounting mistake or something. All right, that's fine. Bring him back. The team's doing well. They get on a streak. They make the postseason again. They get knocked out on a dubious call against New York. That in the first round of the season of the playoffs, and then after it's over, they get rid of the coach again, and then another complete turnover of the roster, and just things started just looking weirder and weirder, and that goes into 2016 where things really started to get bad. They signed this shirt sponsor from Brazil that no one's ever heard of, which ended up not paying them any money. You couldn't buy the product here. It was very strange. They had Ronaldo in for that press conference, and I think that may have been one of the last times he was actually here. And then insurance starts getting dropped. Paychecks are late consistently. They're running out of money, scraping together. And then at that spring was when they decided we're going to abandon the historic stadium for the cricket ground a couple miles down the road, which, to be fair, is a beautiful facility. And the local government made some significant modifications to be able to bring the soccer field closer to the stands and make it suitable for to meet the professional league standards and all of that. But and we didn't really. I mean, the stadium, people were complaining about at Lockhart. It was old. The chairs were broken. The bathrooms were in poor shape. It wasn't great, and we were kind of tied because of various other agreements that were going on with the site, where the city wasn't going to invest any money in it. We weren't, and because there was a proposal to build a big water park and renovate the stadium. But they could never get it fully approved over 4 or 5 years, so it never really happened, and we just didn't have a choice. We couldn't stay in limbo, and they moved. But at the same time, they were also having to take out loans from the league itself and our biggest rival in Tampa Bay to finish the season, because they weren't going to be able to pay the players, pay for the facilities, all that stuff. So it was pretty dire straits, and by the end of the year, we all knew they're not, unless they sell to somebody else, we're not going to continue. And you also had in that year, Ottawa jumping to USL. Yeah. You had San Antonio left. So the teams were jumping. They were down to 8 teams, and we knew if they, they're barely gonna survive into next year. And look, the league did, fortunately, because it's terrible to see a league go out of business completely. But we didn't make it. So we had one last, international match we had to host, and we did that in January 2017. And if you look at the club's Twitter account, that's the last thing that's on there.
Yeah,
it's about a game between Vasco da Gama and Barcelona from Ecuador. So
yeah,
that was it. We just kind of silently went away, and there was some rumors of stuff happening in 2017, but they couldn't come back of it. And then the guy in Tampa Bay owed a bunch of money that they never paid him, so it went to auction, including the name of the team, and he got it. So now nobody here even controls
the name,
the striker's name. It's the guy who's now the former owner of the Tampa Bay Rowdies, our biggest rival. So I think to myself, if this had happened in any other country, it would be humiliating. There would be riots in the streets. There would be people would have to move out and live in exile, which of course these guys did. They went back to Brazil. They've got no stakes here. They didn't care. So they got away scot-free with no repercussions. People are still owed money. Players had injuries, things like that, and they just left. So it was just an absolute travesty to see something that is so historic, and then for a lot of us, was made important by this modern club, and it's just gone. and now, 2 years later, there's a shred of hope, I suppose. So with all the recent developments and what's going on. So
yeah, so
I guess we could segue into that if you
want.
want.
Let's just before that. So we saw some. I think it was a video that went a bit viral on Twitter a year ago, or maybe more, of the Lockhart Stadium.
Right.
Totally. I don't even know how to describe it. But yeah, totally. I don't know. Nature took back there, right? Say like that.
Right. It's absolutely surreal.
Yeah, it's quite weird, but yeah. So since then, there was no rumors. I mean, except let's not talk about the Beckham one yet, but just there wasn't any rumors of the strikers coming back to NASL or NPSL Pro anytime soon.
There was, for a very, very short amount of time, towards the end of 2016, this kind of spring or winter of 2017, right after we had folded, there was rumors that this group, that is out of Miami, they ran a 4th division, like summer college team called FC Miami City. They are some way affiliated with PSG in their academy.
Okay,
and there was a guy, Remy something or other, I can't remember his name, but he was they were in some sort of negotiations to possibly buy the team, maybe take them to USL, maybe keep them in NASL, because at the time they were aligned with USL, but that didn't happen. And then there was another very brief, we had heard about a gentleman who was based in the area that was going to buy the team, but he had been rejected by the NASL on 2 separate occasions for his ownership financial qualifications, which for a league that was in an absolute desperate need of teams
that wasn't good.
To reject twice, we're like, you know what, maybe we don't want that to happen, because we're going to be back in the same situation a year or 2 from now, because if he can't, if they will take literally anyone and they're not taking him, this must not be a great situation. So after that, as that's going on, I'm no longer working in any official capacity for the team, because there isn't one. And so back together with kind of my friends and the supporters, and we kind of get together and so you know what, we're gone. What are we gonna do? There's no club. Why don't we could try starting our own team and see where it takes us? And so that's kind of where Him or She FC came from. It was something we always a couple of us would always joke in the office for years, like, hey, if these guys screw it up, we'll start our own team. We know how to do this. Why can't we do it? We'll just start a NPSL or some 4th division team and just start a team. And that's the genesis of that was I came up with the name and things like that in 2016, and that's kind of a backup plan. And then it turned out we needed to do something, and I kind of got everybody on board, or the folks that were still around on board with it, and we started building our own club, which has been an interesting, to say the least, experience. And that year we were able to find a local league that was inexpensive to join, and only basically play all our games at one field, so that's kind of convenient.
Yeah,
it's got its pros and cons, but we were able to get a team on the field in a relatively short order, and kind of keep the spirit alive, keep the lights on in the area. And then, other than us, it's been pretty quiet until about 3 weeks ago. And then things have kind of sparked back into the forefront again, as it's now 5 years since Beckham announced officially that they were trying to put a team here. Over a year since they were officially awarded it. Last year they had their official press conference, and then shortly after, they now have a name. They're Inter Miami, and they're hiring people, and they're supposed to play next year, but they don't have a place to play yet.
Yeah. I saw they were.
Their stadium is not approved.
Yeah, they were even planning to go to Ricardo Silva Stadium, which I found was amazing.
Which is hilarious, and I'm not even sure that's a serious.
No, I mean the worst is Miami FC. I think has the right to choose first what day they play.
Right, since they are joining NPSL Pro this fall, their contract, I think, will still hold up as valid. They will be a professional team.
Yeah.
So they have a 5-year deal, and this would be the 3rd year of it, I think, to play there. And so after the college football team, they would have second priority. So they would basically be able to tell Beckham's team, you can't play. I think it's 48 hours on either side of whatever day they're playing. So we get Saturday nights. You guys can have Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And then they can't change the name of the stadium. So that would be a pretty unideal situation for the MLS team. So
that'd be really funny.
My personal thoughts is now with this Lockhart proposal that they want to put their training ground there and their reserve team is that they want to, the kind of stadium they want to put up can go up in a few months. They want to try and play there, so they can control revenues, so they can control, you know, everything about it and spin it as a, you know, oh, this is just temporary, because they have not gotten their lease approved for their building that they're trying to do in Miami, and it's struggling every step of the way. So
you don't think you don't think it's just for the USL team?
I think they're hedging their bets somewhat, so that worst case they'll have a place that they control that's you know, with their branding and their everything, and they can say, oh, we built this stadium and we'll move out of here eventually when we get our stadium figured out in Miami. That's what I think their angle is. They haven't publicly said that yet, but I'm guessing that's what they're trying to do, because they're suggesting an 18,000 seat venue for a Division 4 or Division 3 team that will draw 1,000 people at best. It makes no sense for them to put a venue that big. And then even if all things work out, why would you want a venue that big to host friendlies and international games when you're building a 20,000 seat stadium 30 miles away, where you would want to, which would be a much nicer venue, and you would want to showcase and bring all the games there? It doesn't add up. And that's clearly, you're moving resources and things out of the city of Miami. These government officials are trying to convince can't be too pleased with that. The academy is proposed to be up here. It just doesn't add up unless they're trying to play there, which, as this region and the league knows from experience, doesn't work. It's I don't know if you've ever visited this area before, but the Miami and Fort Lauderdale and kind of Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach are kind of closer together, are very culturally different. There's really no reliable public transit that can get you between both places. It's two separate places that happen to look like from space one giant conglomerate area, and the TV is shared between Miami and Fort Lauderdale, the TV channels and things like that. But it's two really culturally different places. So when they put the Miami Fusion in Lockhart Stadium, who only recently were hosting a popular team, you know, for Fort Lauderdale, it didn't really relate to people here, and people in Miami, it takes an hour sometimes to get up here.
So it's too complicated.
So it's difficult to travel there. You're outside of, it's Milton Keynes Dons kind of. It's not Wimbledon anymore. You can't say you're the same thing. So
and there's another proposal at the same time now for local stadium, which I heard.
So yes, that's what's got us very excited. Is so unbeknownst to, or possibly this is why also Beckham is doing what they're doing, is for months this other group has been working on this big proposal for fully renovating the stadium, not knocking it down, but preserving it, improving it, adding shops and hotels and other entertainment stuff and a bunch of practice fields and things around it. And they have been involved with this for almost 2 years, because the other project that was kind of in limbo, they were tied on to be the soccer people behind it. And then these water park businessmen decided, we don't want to do that. We don't have the money to do this project anymore. And these guys were left out in the cold, this group. So now they decided to continue on. They apparently have their approval from the USL League to run a Division 2 team if they can get the stadium renovated and sorted out. So that now they were undercut by Beckham coming in and saying, oh, look at this great proposal we have. We're going to put our training ground there. And so they came out and said, no, wait, we've been working on this for 6 months. We want to put a higher level team and really renovate, uplift the area and that kind of thing. So now it's a big competition. So
but why couldn't there just be an affiliate USL like you have, I don't know, in Salt Lake City or?
Exactly, yes. So the team Beckham would be proposing to place there long term would be a reserve team for their MLS side, which would play in the USL League One, which is the third division, which is starting this year. They just started that league. I believe Orlando and Toronto have taken their reserve teams that have previously been playing second division and moved them down to that league. So
and Dallas started it.
That's the type of team he's proposing. Whereas the other proposal is a USL Championship, which is second division, higher level. And presumably also, I mean, these guys are the people behind this other bid are a soccer promotions company. They helped us run a game with Strikers play Boca Juniors in 2015. And then they brought some other big South American teams here to play games. So I'm imagining that they would also be just as capable of bringing in these other soccer events as the MLS group would. And if the MLS group gets their stadium built in Miami, they won't bring anything up here. because that doesn't make any sense. I imagine they would downsize the stadium significantly after they move out if they do use it as a temporary facility, and keep it at a small venue for their USL team and training, which wouldn't really be useful for a whole lot. You could play some high school, college games, that kind of thing there. They'd have fields, but this other proposal has all of that, plus, the extra niceties going around it. And at the end of the day, a independent-ish, I have my reservations with how USL does some things, but they're a stable-ish organization, and they have some great clubs. They have our rival Tampa Bay is in the league. They're
Sacramento, Phoenix, ton of them actually work. So
some very good teams. Some Charleston, Nashville. Well, they won't be in for longer because they're going to MLS next year. But a lot of teams, good places to travel to. It could be a lot of fun to have our team back in that league. So whether or not it ends up being the Strikers in either case, whoever wins that bid is up in the air because it is still owned by a rival person. But I imagine that he's not going to be running a team of his own. So it doesn't make any sense for him to hold on to it. But so I'm hopeful that either this new team, the more independent bid comes in or wins, and either brings that name back or holds on to it just to protect it, as opposed to the Beckham Group winning it and
getting it.
Frankly, it would be if they took the name and made it a reserve team. Frankly, that would be worse than us not existing at all, because that's just doesn't do anything close to justice to what that name means to, I think, this city and the fans of the club, to be a reserve team that couldn't play in the U.S. Open Cup because they're banned, like Bethlehem Steel is. They have the most Open Cup wins of all time, the Bethlehem Steel from the 20s and the 30s, and they're not allowed in the tournament because they're owned by the Philadelphia Union. It's just a brand name, and now they don't even play in Bethlehem anymore. So it's a shame if that were to happen. And they spin it as honoring the legacy and the community and all this stuff, but it just wouldn't be the same thing. And I don't think I could possibly get behind that, because it kind of subjugates. It's saying again, MLS, since they left Lockhart after singing the praises of it while they were here, it wasn't the right location. It wasn't in Miami. It's no good. We can't use that. They haven't even visited it, and now all of a sudden, you're only good enough for a training team. Your city doesn't. We have to be called Miami.
Yeah,
you're not good enough. So the kind of that elitism, from MLS itself, and some of the supporters down in Miami, kind of entitlement kind of things. Like, you've never supported. If you were about the game, if you were about supporting a Miami club in your city, there have been 2 pro clubs in the last 10 years you could have supported in Miami. And God knows how many amateur clubs that have been actually fairly competitive and good, and nobody supports them. But you got more people that are willing to sit at home and not support the game locally at all, and just, I deserve a top division team because we're Miami, and you can just skip around earning it in this country and just buy it. And at the end of the day, who knows how successful they would be? They might be like Atlanta and do incredibly well. I'm sure they will be, or as soon as they start, they'll have that new car smell type
dynamic,
honeymoon period. But if they're not competitive, I've been a sports fan in this region my entire life, and if you don't play well, nobody goes to see you. And MLS, their battle is going to be, they're not the top league in the world. They're not close to that. So if they're not really, really good, people won't even go to see them if they're a competitive team, because you're down here, you got people that I support, Fluminense, I support Club America, I support Barcelona or Madrid. Why should I watch? I can get that game every weekend on my TV. Why should I pay? Or once or twice a year in the summer, I can see Manchester United or Barcelona in person at the Dolphin Stadium. So maybe I'll save my money and go to that game and not buy tickets to see Beckham's team. So and I think whether we change the system here or not, we have enough people, we have the market differentiation to support more than one club, possibly 2, 3, 4. And a rivalry situation would be, I think, good for everyone involved, because it would bring people, the local neighborhoods together and elevate the game as a whole, as opposed to one club that may or may not be successful, but they control everything. I think you're squandering an opportunity to soccer can still grow and be bigger here, but they're trying to turn it into the NFL, the NBA, where everyone's subservient to 30 cities across an entire continent, and they're the only ones who ever get to have any glory. So it'll be interesting and stressful to see how this whole situation turns out.
I'm very expecting to see how it goes. I thought at the point that they would go to not USL, that other bid. I thought it'd be more an independent thing like NPSL Pro or something that goes on the line of the NASL. But I guess it's better to join a stable team, stable league. Sorry, but yeah.
It's interesting. I think they're with the USL camp because at the time when they started this whole thing, that was really the only other option outside of MLS. Because the NASL was kind of crumbling, that didn't exist yet, and they already have some sort of tentative approval, which is a positive sign for their financials and all of that, because there's certain standards you have to meet as an ownership from money perspective to get approved for that level. So I think they're taking the path of least resistance. Should they lose this bid for the Lockhart site, there may be an opportunity if they really are committed to this, because what's going to be there isn't going to be the first team, MLS team to compete with. So there might be an opportunity for them to say, okay, we'll find another spot. We can maybe do this still in USL at a higher level, because I don't believe the MLS team would have exclusivity over that. Or they could say, hey, maybe if this NPSL Pro thing really does take off, they've got some amazing clubs involved with that. Detroit, Chattanooga, Cosmos, Miami FC, and Silva. So they have the pieces to really do something special there. So if that takes off, you never know what could happen down the line. They don't have any of that market exclusivity stuff. We've got 2 teams are joining that league from Miami. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. They don't care if someone else is there. So there's a hope down the line that might happen too. But for right now, it's exciting to see that there might be a possibility that we could get our club back and save the site, because it's nice that they'll have a sporting legacy continuing if they put their academy and training there, but they're going to level the building. They're going to move the pitch. It's not going to be the same thing, and that place, there's only, off the top of my head, the only other place that's like it I can think of is Portland's facility, which I think it's called Providence Park now, but it was where Pele played his last game as a professional ever, was in Portland, on the same field that the Timbers use now.
Okay.
And other than that facility, Lockhart's the only one that has any kind of history like that in this whole country for soccer that's still standing and still could be used. Right now it's not, obviously, but it could be revitalized, and you could be able to say, that's where these guys played,
So just on Flight 19, so how did the community stay together with him or she? Because the club stopped, but not all the fans, but at least this group of supporters continued. So is it just through the club, him or she, sorry? Is it also through different events organized with the community, or different supports to some bids for the USL, for example?
Sure. It's up until about a week or 2 ago. It's been pretty much a small core of us that are left, basically running him or she, and going out to the games and kind of dealing with that has been our focus, because that's kind of all we got. Now this potential, this group has come in and they're saying, hey, let's get together. You guys are the core, supporters of it from the previous club, this community for soccer. Let's get together. Let's, how can we serve you, and how can you guys help us for win this first step of this battle? And so now we've got an event on Wednesday coming up where we're going to meet with these owners for the non-Beckham bid, and see what they have to say, and hear their plans, and hopefully we'll be able to rally the support that we'll need to try and convince the city government that that's the direction they should go. And if that can happen, we're gonna have to, it's been kind of grim. It's been a handful of people really making everything work. Not nowhere near the amount of people that we would have come out to the Strikers games are coming to the Himmershey games. Even though it's free, it's just a much tougher sell. Even though you can say, like, you control this, you're a member, you kind of own what's going on. It's still not the same thing, and it's hard to, without the possibility of growing it and naturally earning your way up, it's hard to get people involved in that, which is understandable. But so it's been a tight core left, but we're hoping that if things go our way in the next couple of weeks, we can start to rebuild properly, and not only getting the Pro Club back, but as part of the mission for when we started this team, it was we want our club to come back, our Pro Club, and we want to complement them. We can help, because we play in the winter season. that's opposite of the pro season. So there's opportunity for it to help all what we're doing, grassroots, community-based stuff as the supporters in this amateur club, and be hand in hand with a successful professional team. Hopefully back at the historic home of the game here. So there's a ton of possibilities that can come out of this that are very, very positive. So I'm excited about that happening and hoping that things go the right way, and then we can get back to the fun that we used to have. Because now most of what we're worrying about is running the games, making sure like the refs get paid and that we have uniforms and that kind of stuff. We're not singing as much. We don't have the flags. We're not doing the big tifo displays. We're not doing that stuff because we don't have time. We just these guys need balls and they got the game's got to go on. So if that weight can be lifted a little bit, we can get back. I was so disappointed because I met actually side story, but part of the reason why it's so important to me. For most of the time I was involved with the team in any official capacity, I was kind of like a freelance person. So I didn't have any game day responsibilities until the ownership changed in 2015. So I was going to every game. We were tailgating. I was helping set things up. And, we were doing the big banners and the flags and the smoke and the whole 9 yards and having all kinds of fun stuff, road trips. And actually in 2014, I met my wife at a Strikers game. My brother met his wife at the same game. And it's kind of been like at Lockhart, and it's been a kind of a fairy tale story. And the thing that brought us together is now gone. And the building that happened in is in risk of being leveled. So we're trying to save it. And personally, it's important to me on that level. Of course, my wife also was reminding me that she's the second biggest person that helps and does stuff with our Himmershey team, because all of the gear is in our house and. We manage the team basically, and she's my right hand man and second in command on all this stuff. So, so that's it's on a personal level, and I know it's like it brought so many people together, and I know that Inter Miami 2 or Inter FortLauderdal, whatever they would call it, no one would care about, and it wouldn't have that impact on the community where it wouldn't bring people together. It would just be something that's there. It's not a benefit to this area. It's great for their player development. That's fine. But it's wasting an opportunity here in this community to do something special and keep something special going.
Yeah, in a market that's...
Because, and just outside of sports in this area, nothing is like that. Everything is bulldozed. It's replaced with something new. Everyone's from someplace else. There's nothing that has any meat behind it, any history to grab onto, very rarely. In Southern Florida. So anything that we can to save and preserve and so that generations can say, I took my kids here, they're going to take their kids here, that kind of thing would be incredibly important and a huge win in my book if we can make that happen.
Yeah, okay. I see. Well, very interesting actually to see how the community is rail over something, and obviously if that something comes back, you don't want it to be just an artificial thing made
exactly,
by I interviewed Patrick Inferna, who's working with the New York Cosmos a couple of months ago, and it was exactly the same thing. He was just telling me like I cannot kiss the logo of my club if it's a Red Bull brand or if it's New York City FC. I want something that is from the region and local.
Exactly. Yeah, that they have a very, very similar situation to we do. They should have been one of the founding clubs of MLS, as should have been the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and as should have been the FortLauderdal Strikers and the Timbers and the Whitecaps and the teams that were actually successful from history. But they were too afraid of that it failed, and they wanted to make their own path. Well, they struggled in New York for 20 years drawing people to games because they were the Metro Stars, and then they were the Red Bulls with an energy drink as their name. And then they put in a team that's, okay, it's actually in the city, but it's owned by Manchester City, and they wear light blue. That's not New York. That's Manchester, and the same thing here. If they put a team that wears pink and has a heron on its shirt, that's not Fort Lauderdale's team.
That's Miami.
That's Beckham's team. That's Miami's team. And this isn't Miami. And I don't think MLS understands the nuances of this market. They didn't with the first team that they had. They abandoned Miami, but they kept the name. They didn't understand that wouldn't work. And especially in a sport like soccer, that is still by a wide margin, probably the 6th or 7th most popular sports product in this country. If you're just talking about stuff that's based here, probably even less popular than the Premier League and La Liga and any other soccer thing you can think of. So they have to they want to present themselves as a big deal, and they don't think Fort Lauderdale is a big deal enough for them. And I think that's where they ran into problems with the first team that they had, and why. Of course, the system's the way that it is, so it's been a struggle to kind of get anything else sorted out long term. But I'm hoping for a future where we have a club here, they have a club in Miami, and it's doing well, and we're doing well, and we have those games like the Cosmos had against Red Bulls and New York City FC in the Open Cup, and it's absolutely incredible atmosphere and a rivalry and a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Where if we have one MLS team and one reserve team, and that's the only professional teams here, they're going to fake some rivalry with Orlando or Atlanta and try to pretend it's a big deal and try to build something of themselves. But to me, I'm like, why reinvent the wheel when you got it? We had it. They had it figured out in the 70s. In the 80s, they had a great thing going in Florida, in New York, and in a lot of places. Unfortunately, the business practices of the league kind of threw a wrench in that and set us back, 15 years, 20, 30 years, because we still haven't reached the levels that the quality of the teams that we're playing and the amount of people that were coming out to the games and in many places. And they've done great things have happened for the game, and there's more clubs now. There's more professional clubs than there have ever been, but it still has a ways to go to kind of reach its full potential. And there's some things that they could do that would help that, and there's some things that they're doing that are probably more likely that could, hurt that. And I think trying to turn the entire system into a pyramid for MLS is probably not going to help that.
Yeah.
Help that goal. It'll help their MLS teams, but it won't help everybody else, which outnumbers them.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think that was more or less all the question I had. It was really, really interesting. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a good 15 minutes.
Yeah, no problem at all. I appreciate you reaching out.
No worries. Yeah, I'll. So I'm not sure the article will come out as soon as like the end of February, but it probably be in March or something. So I'll email you the article, and yeah, thank you so much, because it's really interesting to see soccer evolution in Florida. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So yeah, have a nice weekend, and thank you again, and good luck for Himashi and everything. I'll follow the bid to USL really closely.
All right. Yep. Thanks.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Oh, man.